I'd like to welcome everyone to today's broadcast of Truth, the reality under the headline. Today's guest, we got a two-timer. We got Nick Richardson, Army veteran, was with Kosovo, and Nick created the program Gr8ter Veterans, in hopes that veterans would be able to receive the resources alike that, so many are shorthanded, help with the homeless population, everything as well too. Some of the things that we'll discuss today to kind of provide individuals the resources and individuals that want to be a part of that, regardless if you're up there in Washington, around Mr. Richardson, or, do you want to handle things remotely, and have a satellite office or something like that, to where if you all come together, the provisions can be made. We'll discuss different things holding the country back today. We'll discuss why knives, we'll just discuss different things of, how Nick looks up to certain individuals and, how we all have those that, we choose who we look up to, which is actually vital in our lives. Because if they're not like-minded, we're following the wrong course. So, without further ado, Nick, welcome again. Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
And so, I know during the last broadcast we covered a lot of the Gr8ter Veterans, and I wanted to touch on a couple things, real quick, if you don't mind. That, it's easy for individuals on the outside to kind of like look at different programs, and it kind of goes with everything. That when individuals see something, or somebody gets a bad rap about where the course of an organization is going. Are they in the business because of the monetary success that you can obtain by having said programs, or are they in it for both? I mean, because without people, it's nothing. People have to be compensated for their time, because this does take a lot of time. It costs a lot, and I mean a lot of money, to be able to provide specific resources, to those in need, whether it be veterans or any other population. And a lot of individuals don't understand. You and I are going to kind of cover this about how self-funded everything has been from the beginning until, like, as we sit now, to where you are able to do certain things that earns that money, that keeps everything rolling. But it's the giving back into that a lot of individuals don't understand, that even though you generate something, you're generating that to be able to give back and have the provisions for others. So that what you're doing is a great thing. But if you want to kind of cover some of the things, or anything new that's came up, if you want to cover the concert and how individuals can donate to that as well, if you could share that with us.
So during COVID, in Washington State, especially because of our tyrannical, I wouldn't even say socialist or communist, he's probably even further past that, Jay Inslee, or Inslees as a lot of us call him. And I don't like the guy, so I don't care. But and it's not because of his party. It's just I don't support poor leadership, period. But anyway, during the pandemic or plandemic, they forced us to shut down a lot of our services in terms of live events. Gr8ter Veterans from day one was built on live events. We use music because it helps with TBI, but it also helps take the veteran off what I call Vet Island and reintegrate into the community by being at one of our events, talking to people, finding out someone else served where they served, or someone's cousin, uncle, brother went to high school with their mom or dad, or something like that. So it helps melt kind of the fog you get in when you're first out. I don't care who you are, you experience it, whether you want to admit it or not. You're like, these people are different than me. And it's there. You can't help it. It's no one's fault. It just is. Well, this helps you get back in the community and realize, okay, there are Americans worth dying for out there still. There's, programs that are grassroots that aren't paying their CEOs and executives, millions of dollars. And there are some out there that do that. We do not. A lot of us out there that are just starting out, or even some that have been going 5+ years like us, are still grassroots, majority self-funded. And a lot of our events are geared at giving back. So we're on a constant, what I call a roll downhill instead of uphill, because our name gets bigger and goes uphill, but we roll downhill because we spend money to put on an event. And sometimes we don't always make it back. So you're going backwards to go forwards all the time. But the good thing on that is because we do work with so many musicians, veteran musicians, et cetera, as their name grows, it kind of helps ours too. So music playing a big life in my personal life, as well as seeing the effects it has on bringing people together. I support smaller musicians a lot of times and some big ones too, because they have a great message that helps everybody, not just veterans. So that's why we do it.
100%. And that's why you and I spoke before, actually going live here in regard to a lot of individuals saying about how you've had it for the 7 years and things like that. Because a lot of individuals don't see the monetary aspect of how much capital it takes to make things like this happen. And that's why if individuals see what Nick is doing and the great that he's actually providing to individuals that otherwise would be doing without, and if you don't have to be hands-on all the time, but if you're a grant writer or you have experience in writing grants, propose that to him, reach out to him like, hey, look, I could actually do this because there's so many different federal grants out there, even state grants out there that, want to provide these services to individuals. So there's always something an individual can do because, and that's why I commend you so much for sticking with it for so long. I have different nonprofits and things, and a lot of times it is a lot of my out of pocket. So like my other businesses have to fund that, but it does become discouraging when, we host an event and then because of having to pay the musicians for coming out, having to pay the vendors for setting up the food, drinks, or anything else that may be provided there, they're the ones making out of the event. And then we walk away, minimally funded or empty pocketed to where it was kind of for nothing. And the provisions that we were, trying to provide are now just as limited as they were before we held that event, cause that. And, individuals may walk away from like the events, like you said, because the music sometimes just brings people together and everything else. So they may walk away with that part of it, but it minimizes, the actual cause of what you were actually trying to implement.
Well, and that's, that's absolutely 100% correct. We always have to gear our sponsorship package to both local and national. So we do have a bigger one for national donors if they want to donate more. But the other thing we wrote in our business plan early on, and we had, Nissan North America. I talked to a gentleman there that was their third in charge for North America at the time. And I said, look, Nissan can fund this. And I told him the truth. I said, I'm not a big Nissan guy, but if it helps vets, I'll drive a damn Nissan. But I said, why not name the center the Nissan Greater Veteran Center or something like that? And you guys help fund it. And you guys can put whatever Nissan dealer, new model you want in one of the showrooms there and help it out. And that's a proposal I've made time and time again to bigger people too is, hey, if you want to fund this center here, I want one in every state. Ultimately, why not put your name on it too? And you can fund it and you're also getting a tax write-off. And that's the thing that kind of still baffles me this far in is, okay, if you're a big business, you have overhead and sometimes you have losses. And one of the ways you can cover those, according to the current U.S. tax code, is to donate to a nonprofit or say a political candidate, for example. They have three basic choices. They maintain a monthly PDC report, which normally most of them pay someone to do, or they have to donate those campaign funds, or they donate to a PAC. And people don't realize that is like, okay, so what do you want to do? You want to risk getting fined? If you didn't win your election, do you want to give it to other people? Or why not do something good that'll say you lost in your campaign, end it on a high note by donating to a nonprofit in your community? And people, it's just, I don't know what the answer is sometimes.
You see, and that's one of the things too, because a lot of people don't understand how that works, how non-taxable entities work. It's like if you go to church, okay, when they pass around a basket, if you just throw cash money in there, that's a gift, okay? Yeah. So you have gift, donation, and tithe, okay? That's why churches have envelopes to where you can check, you put your name and everything on there, and if you put that it's a tithe or you put that it's a donation, at the end of the year, you receive a slip of how much money that you gave them. Same thing with nonprofits. That's why, unfortunately, you see these big celebrities and they do it for their namesake to say, hey, I gave to this charity, but realistically, it's for that tax break. So what happens is that, we earn income. So if I'm making $5,000 a week after my taxes, everything that was taxed, if I donate that $5,000 to Greater Veterans, that's non-taxable income because it was donated to a nonprofit. So what happens is any taxes taken on that 5,000 go back into my pocket at the end of the year, and everything else is reversed to, plus overhead and things like that come back. I mean, it's pretty complex, but it's pretty common sense where it's like, hey, I'm doing this for a good cause, and it becomes a non-taxable, monetary aspect, and supporting the cause itself. I mean, it's outside of like the monetary aspect. I mean, the good that you're doing, because essentially, even though Greater Veterans is the one providing the services, essentially all supporters of that are also providing that service by making it possible. That's why you see the Staples Center, even though they're not into, basketball or anything else. It's, that namesake and sponsorship, people seeing that, it's basically free marketing for them to draw others, in. So.
Well, and that's what I pitched to, like, for example, back to the concert thing, tour cost went up this year because everyone lost their ass in 2020. They made some back last year, and they're trying to make more back this year by booking a lot of dates. I mean, normally you can book most people 6 months out. Some people are already full a year and a half out that I've talked to. And they don't realize gas prices, food costs, hotel costs all go up. That raises tour prices. And before we continue, if you don't mind, I want to shout out one of our early donors, our biggest one so far, that's a gold level sponsor. Her husband's a vet, and they like to hire vets. One of her sons is a vet. They also do a lot of great things for the community, not just veteran communities. So I just want to give them a quick shout out to Jim and April at Prodigy Property Management. So they're doing a lot of great things, not just for us, but other people. So I just want to thank them real quick. I believe in paying it forward and saying thank you like you should.
That's amazing, and especially with property management, because that goes a long way too with them sponsoring things like that, because that's where you get that duality as far as benefit for both, providing the service and things like that, to where, as we all know, homelessness amongst veterans is higher than it should be. I mean, a lot of it, everybody argues that people make themselves that way, but there are a lot of individuals that if provisions were made for housing and things like that, you would alter the course of someone's life. Where you have individuals that are interested and are donating to a great cause, such as like the property management and everything, where they can have that housing where it's set aside specifically for veterans and things like that. So it's, and I heard you mention about them being a gold sponsor. So is that something like within your organization where individuals have different tiers and individuals can have like monthly?
Yeah. So we did for this event, because one of our friends wanted us to set it lower since Deer Park's not a big city. But I thought, if you don't have a different tier system geared toward each event. So like we have, I'm trying to find it here so I can read it to you real quick. But we have for, bigger events and year round, we did a military thing. So like our top sponsor on our normal sponsorship level, we made the Joint Chief of Staff level is what we call it. So that's like 8,000 and up. A commanding officer, which we use the full bird colonel rank for, that's 4,000 to 799. And then it goes junior officer, senior NCO, junior NCO, and recruit. That's how we do our standard level because it's military themed. But for this community and this series, we decided we would do gold, silver, bronze, especially with Olympics. And I wanted to do something kind of tailored towards the community. We were going to do, since it's called Deer Park, we were going to do like fawn, doe, and buck, but they're like, that's too gimmicky. So we went with gold, silver, and bronze. So
perfect. And another thing too that we discussed, during the previous broadcast as well too, is you see a lot of organizations that lose way on what the actual cause was. They don't have their niche market. So if you want to cover again as far as like, what the niche services that you provide to veterans and everything are real quick.
All right. So one thing I'm big on, like our motto indicates, is helping veterans achieve greatness, right? So what that means is everyone has a different idea what greatness is, whether it's from becoming a great singer, which obviously I can help with, all the way down to a business plan, anything like that. So I have a wide array of contacts that I help them out with. So just connecting people, being there as a peer support role, meaning, unfortunately, I don't like to talk about it and get on the dark side too much, but, I take veteran suicide calls, depression calls, veterans needing help or connections in a various thing, anything under the sun, work on legislative stuff. MST right now is a hot topic I'm working on. One of our best claim officers in the area out of the Tri-County, which is up towards Colville, Washington, recently got unjustly let go from doing claims for that county. And he was one of the best in probably the Northwest, literally no joke. And I reached out to some congressional contacts, which did less than an adequate job of looking into it. So, part of me wants to dust off my pants and get up and run against them. And another part of me is like, do I just let them continue to expose themselves as inadequate and then wait for the right time? So I don't know where I'm at with that, but, just an all-around advocacy group, number one, is our first goal. And then obviously the evac center and the services there that you can find on our website is what we're working towards.
And that's a great point as well too, and I love how you just said that as well too, because like you and I just discussed before, in regard to, you have so many individuals that complain or want change, but there's no action being taken to create that. So it takes an initiative, the reaching out, regardless, because a lot of us, we doubt ourselves so much that, hey, if I contact Congress, or if I write my legislators, that it doesn't make a difference. But it always starts with one. And individuals that go out there, and same thing with like military or anything else, you always have the naysayers on the sidelines telling you what you should be doing differently or what could make things better, but they don't actually take the action to do that. And a lot of that goes into what we opened this up with as well too, to where a lot of individuals fear how much working capital it takes to actually go onto a venture like this or to make things happen, finding the right sponsorships. But, a lot of times, finding like-minded people, because, obviously you see these issues, these issues affecting thousands, millions of other individuals, to where, you start, gathering those like-minded individuals, part of that Second Amendment, us be able to form groups if we see that government is against us rather than for us, to be able to form those groups and make things the right way and everything. And that's kind of out of sight, out of mind to a lot of individuals. That's why I love having this discussion. A lot of people get their panties in a bunch, or, go on an uproar because, pointing out the realities. But, it takes individuals like yourself to say, hey, you know what, I'll put the pants on and go run against them. Because, despite the fact of winning or losing, at least addressing that issue, now it's a front thought to all of those that want to say something but don't. So
I've never had a problem saying anything. I mean, I have a few Article 15s from the Army to prove it, and write-ups at my last job, and I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind or what the truth is. It's just it's frustrating to me because we do need more veterans in leadership, and not to say names, but there's a well-decorated individual with an eye patch out of Texas that has a less than stellar attendance record showing up for votes. And I think you know who I'm talking about. But, I'm not trying to call him out, because I do appreciate the individual service as both a veteran and a nonprofit founder, right? But I also do believe that if Congress, the House, and Senate doesn't show up for at least, say, like 85% of their votes, we need an amendment saying, hey, not that your party can replace you, your party must, and we need to emphasize the must part, because if anyone else has a normal 9-to-5 job or any job and they show up less than 80% of the time, or 85, you better believe they're getting written up and ultimately terminated for something because of that.
And that's a great point. And I mean, in one point that is obvious but blind to a lot of individuals is that in individuals running for a presidential office. So you have senators or Congress individuals that are being paid by us civilians to hold that role as in the Senate or in Congress or mayor. I don't care which office they're holding, but they're being paid to uphold the duties of that said office. But then for a year and a half, 2 years, It's, hey, I still want my paycheck on time, but I'm doing this other thing to run for a different job. That's like having a job at Subway and, putting your gloves down and telling your boss, hey, I want that same locker on my gloves here. I'm going to go look for a job at Quiznos for a couple of years, but I still want my paycheck on time. It's insane when you think about it. It really is.
Well, it is like, so I'm not going to say the Congresswoman's name, but you know where I'm at, so you can figure it out. But, during the government shutdown, when I was working for Homeland Security still, she came through and she said, I'm not taking a paycheck during any of this. And I can say a small cuss word, right?
Okay. Oh, of course. Of course. This is
all right. Just making sure. So I looked at
federal advisory on it.
Okay. So I looked at her straight in the eye and I said, bullshit. And she goes, why? And I want to say it was 2012, but I could be wrong. But Speaker Boehner passed I don't know if it's a bill or just a rule, but he basically passed a rule that no members of the Congress can forego their paycheck in the event of a government shutdown. Like, he made it to where they have to be paid. And I like to remind any elected official, not to get too far in the weeds, but I had an issue with the city councilman here, to continue on this subject real briefly. But he said, how many weeks should the city council be forced to hear the citizens' agendas or what's important to them, issues, etc.? And the top answer was 3 weeks. And I wrote on there always, and he got kind of huffy with me. And I said, don't forget we're a government by the people, for the people, right? The Constitution, which words are biggest in the Constitution? We the people, right? Then there's also the power of recall. So I told him to enjoy his last term as city council, because either myself or someone else will run his ass out of there. I haven't decided yet. And I said, so you want to declare war? You just did. And he goes, no, I'm a conservative. And I said, no, you're not. You're full of shit. If a citizen wants to address their elected officials, your answer isn't you only get 3 weeks to do so in a session. No. And then he backtracked. And of course I screenshotted it and made it public for him. So. And the same thing with Kathy, don't tell me you're forgoing a paycheck and then take one, right? There's bills, rules, whatever you want to say, preventing that. Then don't blow smoke up people's ass. I understand most people don't follow politics like you or I do. I get it. And that's part of the reason there's a flaw in this country, is because you can have disagreements in terms of party, but fundamentals, everyone should agree. The Constitution, amendments, Bill of Rights, just general human decency,
Yeah, see, on top of that as well, too, that's just like a town hall meeting, right?
Yeah.
It's hey, you can attend, but then you're limited on how much time you have to talk about certain issues. And if their time runs out, what's convenient for them, there could be 5 more civilians that have issues that they need to address that affect everyone that's in that room and the community as a whole. But you're just shut out. It's like, oh, hey, we don't have time for you to listen, when that's what you were appointed to do, was to listen to the concerns and address the concerns of those within your jurisdiction, community, things like that, the nation as a whole. So
we need to shake it up. Like, I've been looking at just different things we pay either taxes on, or we license and registration things we do. So, and I've argued with people on shows about it and just in person. They say, well, our forefathers didn't foresee our country growing like this. And again, I have to use that bullshit word on that, because they were very smart men and women back then. So you're going to tell me, like, say, for example, with the Second Amendment, they had no rational thought about weaponry advancing. Not true. Or, where's pet licensing mentioned in the Constitution? Or how many pets I can have on the premises of my own property?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Okay, so you live here, you can have 4 dogs, where if you move a mile away, you can have 10. Who cares? As long as they're taken care of, who are you to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
Or concealed carry. Look at that. You obviously know who I voted for and supported, but the only promise that individual did not deliver on, which was one of the first promises made during their term as president, was national conceal carry reciprocacy, right? Because, show me in the Constitution where it says pay your city or state money to carry a gun that the Constitution allows you to carry. It doesn't. And I mean, when you look at history and you study it like both of us have, and I'm not advocating for violence, right? Let's go with civil discourse always first. But our forefathers would have been throwing tea in the harbor by now. And then you look at, say, England and Boris Johnson. I shared it yesterday. They're getting rid of masks. They're getting rid of mandates. They're getting rid of lockdowns. So a country that we fought to break away from, that generally speaking has less rights than we do. They can't even really own guns over there. And I think knives in certain areas are even gone. But yet here we are, under the tyranny we fought to, leave. Why?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100%, and that's one of the things too that gets conflicted so much within, trying to argue the Constitution because of the fact of when federal government, trumps state governments or municipalities or the cities. And that's where a lot of like civilians don't understand that breakdown of government, but that's why there should be universal laws, regardless of states being able to make their own laws. But there are certain ones that, imbibe by the Constitution, which are the rights of you, I, and every other civilian within the United States. Those are guidelines that no state being their own state can go against. The U.S. Constitution applies to every state that, there's fine lines and clauses for territories and things like that, but within the states of the United States, the Constitution applies all the way across the board. So if a state is imposing certain mandates or changing policy legislature, it's going against Constitution. That's federal. That's when the federal government needs to put on their big boy pants and step in to say, hey, you know what? Regardless of this, it's not right. This is what we're still going to impose. And you see the lackadaisical stuff going on, statewide. I know you see it a lot up in the Northwest and in Washington. And again, it plays into that tyrannical aspect where they talk about things when it's convenient for them, their campaign, or what, their agenda holds. It's like, the riots were convenient when, the election was going on. The civilians, here or anywhere else outside of, being within Washington don't understand that a lot of it still is going on. And so many changes in policy and things like that individuals just don't know their rights. And I don't think any state should be able to violate anything, that's within the U.S. Constitution. That's a federal job, and it needs to be, imposed a lot more. So,
well, and it does. And I mean, like you look at, in Deer Park, Washington, where I live, right, about a year ago, a little over a year ago now, there was an individual not authorized to carry a firearm because he was a convicted felon. A round was shot in the air. No one was hit, right? So a lot of citizens here, including a current city council member, not the same one, a different one, decided that we need to look at funding our own police department. So here's what I cautioned. I said, first of all, you already contracted with Spokane County, right? So that absolves the city of a high financial liability. So stay that way, number one. Number two, they don't understand the difference between a city police department and a sheriff, because a sheriff's job is to back the Constitution. But the other thing is, let's say you want to fire one of them, right? A sheriff you can fire simply by voting them out when their term's up. A police chief, if they were to be corrupt, God forbid, there are some, but I know a lot of good ones, don't get me wrong. But say they were to be corrupt as a police chief, you have to go through the city council, city attorneys, their attorneys, police unions, city council, mayor, and it's like
the rep.
Yeah. So if you're already contracted with someone, why absorb more financial and fiscal responsibility than you have to? Why? Over one stupid incident.
Yeah. And speaking of seeing that word contract, that's why you see a lot of these different government agencies contracting out to third parties rather than having everything in-house, whether it be the municipality, city, state, county, and things like that as well, So
yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. But I mean, so circling back, I hate that word. I can't believe I just said that. But going back, yeah, I hate that. Every time I hear that, I get angry. But so excuse me for that. But rewinding a little bit, right? So some of this ties into veteran issues too, because veterans think, a lot of them, getting out, that they're just going to get out of the service and the government's going to say, you know what, I signed that contract with you, like an insurance company, to identify or make you whole again for whatever we broke. That they're just going to say, you know what, Michael, you broke your leg when you were in because of stupid leadership. So you know what, I'm going to compensate you 20% just out of the kindness of my heart. And it doesn't work like that. And that's why you need advocates and organizations that are willing to fight. And unfortunately, just like politics, a lot of the bigger organizations are all about money and paying their people and not services. And very few of the quote CEOs in some of these bigger nonprofits and companies have actually spent time on the ground taking a call from a suicidal veteran or a veteran in need, like a lot of us have. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference is, you know, people like myself, we're not influenced by money or power. We're influenced by doing the right thing and what we believe is right at all costs.
100%. And on top of that as well, too, you know, organizations like yourself that are veteran-owned, veteran-ran, you know, veteran board.
Yeah.
A lot of the VAs nationwide, they have the counselors in place that never served a day. And that should never, I don't care what planet you live on, be allowed. You know, a veteran talking to somebody that read a book that, you know, wasn't exposed to the certain traumas and things like that exist. It doesn't make sense to a veteran trying to open up about some of the things that are, you know, going on in their mind and their families and things like that on how they deal with things. So that's where like organizations like yourself, you know, provide that service that otherwise it should be done in-house. You know, we shouldn't need external organizations providing services that are ultimately guaranteed to you. You know, like you just said, you know, when you enlist into the military, I don't care what branch you enlist into, you're going to come out 100% of what you went in. But then, like, you know, when you're doing the firearm training, it's, you know, hearing's, you know, loss. You know, there's so many different things that happen. You know, carrying, you know, full gear for so many miles, you know, it affects the back, the knees, everything else. You're not coming out 100%. And like you just said, you know, it's almost like an insurance underwriter that's going to find every little excuse not to give you what you're essentially entitled to.
Well, and people, you know, I try and be outspoken when I do my Facebook lives or anything, or interviews like this, where I talk about some of my issues as openly as I'm comfortable with, and I try and get more and more comfortable. But like, you know, with this 2-year slowdown thing, it's been a blessing and a curse because we're not as busy as we traditionally have been in terms of doing events, but I'm taking more phone calls, and then I'm also rehashing things from my past that I thought I had isolated and dealt with that are coming back at weird times and slapping me across the face and, you know, affecting my mood and mindset sometimes too. And it happens to all of us, but what we need to do is get off the one size fits all solution for everybody. Like the VA, if you call the VA and you're suicidal, you'll get someone, maybe a vet, maybe not, mostly no, that's going to read off a script. Have you thought about harming yourself? You know, how many attempts? What did you do? And it's like, when I talk to somebody, I tailor what I say towards the individual. Most people that call me obviously know me or have seen me on social media or in person somewhere. And I make it a point to say, okay, before we deal with what you just tried to do, are you okay? You're not bleeding, whatever is away from you, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, cool. What caused that? What issues in your life are causing you to consider not being here anymore? Is it say for a girl, you don't feel like guys find you attractive, or is for a guy, vice could be the same thing, or is it a job loss? Is it being a single parent? Because believe it or not, I know more female vets that are single parents than males, right? And I'm not saying every situation is the same, because they're not, but a lot of times they struggle because their maternal instinct kicks in and they want to do more than they're doing. So they start to beat themselves up internally and internalize a lot of their stuff. And you know, as a father to a daughter, I hate it deeply that we can send our women to war, whether it's our mother, wife, daughter, sister, aunt, whatever, niece, doesn't matter. But yet we're not affording them the same opportunities and realizing that they have different needs after service than men do. Like, look at the Spokane VA. Just a couple years ago, they were able to finally get a on-site, I don't know if it was a gynecologist or what, but a doctor specializing in female care. Before, they were always outsourcing them. So that's a budgetary thing too, is why wouldn't you have one on staff?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just common sense solutions that no one wants to talk about. But it's like, if it, what's that old KISS philosophy? Keep it simple, stupid. It's that kind of deal. It's some of it's not hard. It's just people have to roll up their sleeves. Our government, whether it's state, local, or federal, have to budget for it. I mean, we want to give people walking across a border $450,000 just because they can walk across the border, but those of us that served our country ain't getting no $450,000.
Yeah, I mean, even individuals in general, struggling and doing the things, they've lived their life doing, like the Social Security itself. People have to fight to get, that and any kind of services for like medical and things like that they've incurred because they held jobs and paid into Social Security. The same thing with the veterans. You've paid into, what you're owed by serving in the first place. It's not something you should have to fight for, and it is, like you just said, it has to be customized for each veteran. PTS, affects individuals in different ways. And that's where, because all of us develop attachments in our lives. As human beings, we develop attachments. Okay, so even though everything may be okay right now for me, because I have somebody next to me or I have that attachment that I'm able to release any struggles that may be bottling inside, if I lose that attachment, what's going to happen? And everything comes at you full scale. And that's where, like you were saying in regard to, the suicide hotline, let's just say, and you're asking them just questions off of that card to where they become frustrated. They start shutting down. They don't want to talk about it, to where it was because they've had it for so long. No, I haven't thought of this before. Well, I've thought of it, 5 or 6 times now. It's have you thought about hurting yourself? It's like, well, that's why I'm on the phone right now. You know what I mean? It's and it becomes condescending to a lot of individuals as well too, to where what you say sometimes is going to determine if they stay on the phone with you or carry out, unfortunately, their actions of what they were trying to prevent themselves from doing. So.
Well, and it's important for me too when I talk about that subject, because I don't want to say I hate talking about it, because if we don't, it becomes a stigmatism, whereas if we do, it helps people fight it. But the thing is too, it's important for anyone. They can reach out to me. Where my number is. You can post it. I don't care. I'll answer. I keep in mind too, I do have a life where I'm homeschooling my daughter now. So that's a whole nother can of worms. But people need to remember, when you kill yourself, right? It's not just you that's affected. It could be your wife and kids, your little brother or sister, a veteran that discovers you afterwards. And that's why it's important, if you need help, if you're struggling, you reach out, not just to an organization or somebody, even if they're not a vet, right? Even if they don't know what the right answers or the right things to say are, at least talk to somebody. Because a lot of times it's just like, if you're driving a car down the freeway, right? If you can keep your car straight and blow a tire and slowly pull over, you're going to be good. But if you panic, you're going to flip your car and probably get severely injured or dead. It's kind of the same thing with that. If you can at least talk to somebody, it's pumping the brakes, it's putting on your 4-ways, your flashers, and saying, hey, I need some help over here on aisle 12, and it kind of slows it down and slows down the thinking process. And, I think that's really, as simple and meat and potatoes as it needs to be,
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes individuals just need somebody else to have that active listening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing just to sit there and put on the headphones and listen to someone, but active listening is responding back to something that they may be saying, showing them that you're paying attention to them, because a lot of individuals, feel at wit's end because nobody listens to them. I mean, people may hear them, but nobody's really listening to them. They've heard the problems for months upon months, if not years, but nobody's responded back with the proactive ways of, helping them deal with what it is that they're going through. So again, that's what happens with that whole shutdown aspect of everything, where they just internally shut down and they feel nobody wants to listen. To where, being able to actively listen and responding at those key moments to show them that you're actively listening to them, ultimately could make or break somebody, literally, and So it's taken for granted a lot of times, and some individuals that are in that position, like you stated, they're just in that position to have that position. They're not really in it for the benefit of those that may have to call in, to where you're ultimately holding someone's life or death in your hands. So.
Well, and I tell people too, and it's kind of the grim reality of it. And I chose to do this, and in no way am I complaining about it. But I tell people, how many times I've gone to bed hungry, horny, or had to reheat my plate 4 and 5 times because I've taken calls, and I don't regret it, right? I don't. But all I'm saying is if you're thinking about doing something, definitely do it, but know that there's going to be times where it's going to interfere with what you want to do. But if you're sincere about helping people, it's worth it. And that's the part that I think out of all of this that I enjoy the most, is when I know someone's not able to reach what they want, and then they reach out to us and we continue to check in with them. And not only do we help them get through what they're going through, but then you also see them start to have success in their personal lives, and you make them feel like family. And that's how I want to grow this, is just where everyone in our group wants to help everyone, whether it's here, whether it's in your state, no matter what. If I send someone to you, I know you'll help them. And it's about networking and helping people and putting like-minded individuals together. And that's how you fix the veteran community, not with, gimmicky TV commercials and brands that sway like a fart in the wind on their opinion on anything. It's.
Yeah, and that's what makes it hard as well too. And I mean, because you just hit on that, to where with when individual, like the like-mindedness, okay. So you take a veteran that comes home, their significant other, their friends, their family can be empathetic and things like that, but they can't relate to what they're trying to express over. So they feel so bottled in. And even though their significant other, their spouse, their kids, friends, family, co-workers, whatever the case may be, even fellow veterans may be listening, are they really listening? Are they understanding what it is that I'm saying that I'm going through? And that's where the suicide becomes dangerous. It's just like a personal relationship. If when two individuals come together and you guys are like-minded at that time, you have the same interests, same hobbies,
Yeah.
you both watch football, you both like hiking, whatever the case may be. But later in life, as you realize that, hey, we're not on the same page, and you start distancing yourself, it's the same thing with a veteran coming home, to where now they have all that extra baggage instilled in their minds of what they just witnessed and went through, in trying to have that same relationship, that like-mindedness is missing. So that's why so many feel that there's nobody to talk to. That's why that's why suicides happen so much. It's because, individuals, even though they may have that action where they love that person, but then it's a two-way. It's the, I can't live without you, but hey, here it is. And it's that kind of moment. I hate bringing that type of thing up, but that's the reality of it. It's that like-mindedness, to where, hey, I want to be here, but are you listening to me? Or are you just hearing me like, oh, hey, that's great. But, when you're trying to describe what you've seen over in Kosovo to your wife or your kids or friends or family, there's no relation there. I hear you. This is how I deal with it. Yeah, I dropped a dish the other day and it startled me, opposed to, a bullet flying past your head. There's a big difference there. And that's where it's so important for individuals, organizations like yourself, and for Gr8ter Veterans, that, has individuals in place that, hey, I know, I've been there, so.
Well, and it's important too, like the media, when they hear veteran, they automatically think like, and not to knock on them, because I have a lot of friends that are, but to the media, you don't really get sound bites unless you were on one of the teams, or, ODAs, or something significant that there's 4 million books and movies about. If you're just a little guy doing the work, they don't give two shits. And I mean, unfortunately, it's the way it is. But also we've done that to ourselves, in my opinion, in the veteran community. There's, and I'm not going to say names, not because I'm afraid of backlash, but because I don't want to give them more play than they deserve in my life. But there's some bigger name veterans that I've reached out to on some things that veterans need help in their areas. And they won't even message me back, or they'll blow smoke up my, what. And there's a lot of that too. And it just bothers me. It's like, I reached out to a service dog organization because we want to do that eventually. We're just not there yet. About a veteran in their area that lost his dog because he was homeless and the police were harassing him. So they ended up tasing his dog because it was doing blocking techniques like it's supposed to. And I messaged a certain individual that has a service dog organization. They didn't so much as say, I'll look into it. And that's what I'm saying. We're dropping the ball on the nonprofit side too, a lot of times, because if someone's not as big as you on social media, then you don't think their work is as significant. So you don't see them on their level. Whereas like with us, I answer all my messages personally. There's no auto anything. If you call the number, it goes to my cell phone. If you send an email, it comes to my eyes. And I did that on purpose because if you're the face of something, people don't want to talk to any of the other board members, unfortunately. They want to talk to you. And if you're going to put yourself out there and say you're advocating for veterans, then either do it and keep doing it or shut the hell up and go away. Those are your two choices.
Right. That's why the movies Full Metal Jacket and Platoon, in my eyes, were so great because they focused on the grunts. They focused on the little ones, making it happen. Because, like you just said perfectly, where, that's what's lost sight on. It does take the commanders and things like that to point the fingers and kind of, direct and to plan and to organize and to implement the different strategies of why we're going to be successful. But without the grunts, it's the same thing with, here anywhere, an employer, without your grunts, you're nobody. But how many times do you see them recognized? How many times? And that goes a long way because that's why a lot of individuals like talking about the suicide awareness, it's what was all this for? I gave my everything. I did have a passion about that, but we don't do it to get patted on the back, but in the same sense, a little bit of recognition can go a long way, to where it's why did I even do this for? Then I come back home. I mean, look at Vietnam, for example. All those soldiers that came back home and being spit on and things like that, like they were the ones that decided to, that they were the ones making the call. They were just serving under a command of which they had to do. And, that in itself became a political war rather than an actual needed war, where, that's when the industries were starting to get up about clothing. I don't want to get into all that stuff, but, it affects individuals on a large scale because it's like, I did this for the better, and, the disrespect that I'm receiving, I can't even get help because my medical isn't 100% as when I went in and served, and people get pulled away from that. It's just like the news. They always find the I'm not going to, I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but they always find the worst in the community to put on national TV to describe what they just witnessed. Oh yeah, I just seen that. And it's like they just try to find that person to put on there, but when you try to recognize those that make things happen, it's always the CEOs or the higher ups that, well, I made a decision to, implement this in here, even though it took thousands of people or hundreds of people or the little men, the grunts, to actually make that happen. And it's you're watching all the people on national TV like, oh yeah, hey, they're getting commended. All of my stuff was for nothing,
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's, in our society, we became more of a money talks thing, but we've also been more of a bullshit talks thing. And, I've never gotten paid to speak anywhere. I've never gotten paid to do any shows. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll let someone cover my airfare and a beer or something. But I mean, I never did any of this for money or recognition. I did it because I felt there was a need for it and I felt it was right, and that's as simple as it gets. But yeah.
So how much of what you do with Greater Veterans is like for the growth and I'm not going to say the restructuring because that's one of the things that's great about it is the fact that you stick to the niche that of the services and that you're trying to provide, but how much of what you hear impacts redevelopment or the growth of Greater Veterans?
Well, I mean, I take every critique and praise in the same pot, so to speak. I look at everything. Like, one of my biggest weaknesses as a leader is patience. So if I have board members that I'm like, hey, can you handle this task and it's not getting done? Okay, you know what? I'll do it. And my wife's like, no, you need to start demanding that people prove themselves or you need to move them out. And not to make it sound like I'm a dictator, because I'm not, but I've started the last couple of years, especially, and right now I can honestly say, no disrespect towards anyone else that's been on the board, but I have one of the most active boards I've ever had in terms of energy, passion. And I think also part of that comes from me developing myself further too. And realizing sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I think in the past this event would be a dud, but you know what, you're passionate about it. You know what, if you get sponsors and can show me a different way that would make this appear successful in my eyes, you know what, let's do it. And like the summer concert series, the great thing about it is for us when we do this is it gives back to the community. It helps de-escalate the fear that's out there right now. And it's just a way of giving back, not just to veterans, but literally everybody. And it's open to anybody. So if someone wanted to fly in from Florida, Tennessee, doesn't matter where, New York, they're welcome at our event. It's the summer concert series, free of charge. It's meant to, kind of bring things back together,
100%, and that's the thing as well too is, it's one thing being like-minded, but even like-minded individuals still need to be open-minded to the other parties, suggestions, critiquing, and things like that. That none of us would get to where we are today if we didn't accept criticism and things like that, and have that open mind for change. You don't have to change everything as a whole, but maybe implementing in different strategies, or that's why you see the different, I'm not going to say piggybacking or merging, but that's why you see different organizations to where your provisions may benefit it and get them ready for the next organization's provisions, rather than trying to develop a new program yourself and kind of sway away from what your niche market is and your services and provisions. That, hey, look, we also have this other organization that once we get you to this point, I can refer you over to them. Because that's one of the things that individuals and organizations have a hard time doing is not taking everyone and being able to say, hey, you know what, my service, my program, myself is not best or not best suited for you, your family, whatever the case may be. So,
well, and that's true, but that's why we develop deeper development into our core. But also what we do is we develop things that we like, a lot of our fans like I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a minute, but a friend of mine, Jason, I won't say his name on here, but he lives north of me and he's a retired operator. I'll say that, but the guy did 30 plus years and has a resume that's impressive just on what I know, not including everything, but he's been speaking out about what it takes to be a good parent, a good leader, some of his hobbies. His wife's a great photographer and writer. And it got me rethinking about, some of my passions. And so I've tried to take some of my passions and bring it into Gr8ter Veterans, like not to cut ahead of you and transition into some of the talking points here, but like knives. I like knives because to me it's primitive. It's more rugged. Like guns are cool. I love guns, right? But knives are kind of a whole different animal to me. They always have been since I was a kid. So lately I've been getting into, I won't say higher end knives, but more bushcrafting geared stuff. So we did the T.R.U.T.H company. I think they have less than 20 employees based out of Ohio. And they make some pretty cool bushcrafting knives. So I thought, they're a company that probably got hit hard during the pandemic, even though they have a pretty loyal fan base. So I bought some of their custom knives for this year and raffled them off at our Christmas party.
Awesome. I'm a knife to vet or knife to gunman myself, but it's, I don't know if it's the primitive aspect of it, but realistically, especially in close quarters, it's like that 20-foot rule. If somebody's pulling their firearm, that 20-foot rule, if you got a knife and they got a gun, it's really to your advantage. A lot of people don't see it like that. And with self-defense, and there's a lot of, like, in law enforcement, there's a lot of agencies that knives are restricted, and it's kind of insane when you think about it, because it would kind of help with all of fatalities and things like that, because there's a way of defending yourself, keeping the knife closed to where, people are trying to attack you. I always suggest that females, learn how to use a knife, carry a knife for, self-protection and stuff like that as well too. But, I collect knives myself.
So you get it. But I mean, like, I have two of them with me. I'll show you real quick. But so the first one, this is, I don't know if you can see it good, but it's like, they call it a snakeskin micarta. It's pretty cool. But this is from T.R.U.T.H. This fire still, you've heard of the company Überleben. They're based out of Bonners Ferry, which isn't far from me. But I mean, they're known for having the thickest, if I can get the camera angle right here, whoops, the thickest spine in the business. And like I tell people, the reason you want a thick spine is so you're not using your blade if you're, feather sticking, fire building, etc. And then this one, this is something I want to, if I may, talk about for a brief second too. So Navy SEAL Kristen Beck, this is that Purple Heart wood out of Africa, and this is one of her knives. And let's see if I can get the angle right. But I mean, this thing's like a Sherman tank of knives. So she built this for us to raffle off this year at some point we'll be doing. But it's entirely hand forged. And then she teaches hand forging as part of Mindful Valor, her nonprofit. So kind of something we're happy to work with. And, we disagree with each other on a lot of things, but we're still friends. We're a little bit opposite politically and otherwise. But I mean, it's just cool, the opportunities you have to work with other people, help other people. So that's one of the things that's cool about it too.
Awesome. And also, like, a lot of people don't know what the bushcrafting is, as far as like the customizing and things like that as well. So when you're selecting your knives, what do you look for?
So I'm a big, number one, quality. I prefer USA made. I mean, I do have some Hella knives, the Hella Viking, which is out of Norway. They're good too. But I try and get as many USA knives as possible. I like looks, but I don't want to spend $1 million either, because at the end of the day, it's a tool. So I'm more than just a collector. Majority of my knives I collect, but not collect as in put on a shelf. I actually use. So I like something that holds an edge. I'm a big tool steel guy, so like 1075, 1095, 01, A2. Not too much of a laminate steel guy. The heat treat's important because that not only helps keep the blade together, but keeps it looking nice. I go Army style on my knives. After I use them, I wipe them off with the light green pad, and I use CLP when they're in the sheath. So, I mean, I'm that traditional. And then grind's important too. People forget that, but
Well, a lot of individuals don't realize like how much just skin oil damages metal. That's like I don't care if it's a firearm or a knife. Our skin oils will damage, rust, and everything else. And it actually, one of the biggest things against the integrity of the metal on our firearms or our knives. So that's it's funny, like you said about the cleaning it with the rag and everything else too. It's an important step on maintaining, especially if you're collecting. So
yeah, and I mean, I know collectors like T.R.U.T.H community, for example. There's some people out there. There's a private group. It's called the Pout House. You pay $20 a year, and you get inside information on when new knives come out. You can custom design your own. They pick 2 different knives every, say, like 3 months. So it's kind of cool. But people have in this section there called the Barter House, and people will sit there and these guys will just buy knives. I don't know what they do for a living, but I mean, when you're buying, 180 on up dollar knives, like they're free candy, and then they end up trading them and they change hands. And a lot of these guys just put them on a shelf, and it's like, I can't get behind a company if I can't use their product and say, hey, you know what, this is durable, and their product is. So that's why I use it. But there'll be a video coming out soon, like the one we did for Buck Knives with Kristen's nonprofit. Her forge is called Thor's Forge, like the Viking Thor, not Thor, but Thor. And there's no site or anything for it yet. But basically, Todd writes for a lot of the gun magazines. He's a retired Green Beret. He's kind of a guy that beats the hell out of things and tests them. So he'll be doing a video through his survival channel, Odin's Wolf Survival. and that'll be out soon. So I'll have to send it to you, and I'll post it when it's out. But that's one of Kristen's knives and that. So
Perfect. It's the things like that as well too. Like companies stick by the integrity of everything. Rather than trying to switch of like what the fad is on knives and things like that to where it's aesthetically made rather than quality made. It's like, oh, it looks cool, but does it cut? Is it how's it handle and everything else of like all the important things of when you're selecting a knife and everything goes. So
well, I mean, it's like, I mean, if you look at just on the knife side for another second, but if you look at some of the knife reviewers out there, I'd say a third of them I wouldn't even let run with scissors, if you know what I'm saying. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, I've seen guys use oblong shape wood to baton through, and I'm just watching the video like some people watch NASCAR waiting for a wreck to happen, and like, this dude's gonna end up stabbing himself or something. And I keep waiting, and thank God they're short videos. But and then the other thing is guys that baton through logs with their knives. It's cool, it can do that, right? But realistically, if you read most manufacturer warranties, just like Glocks, if you use hand loads, it's an instant void of the warranty, right? Factory ammo only. It's the same thing with knives. If you're throwing them, batoning, or doing stupid shit, you void your warranty with a lot of companies. And me personally, I'm going to carry a light hatchet or axe, or I'm going to build a fire with smaller wood and deadfall. So to me, if a knife can baton through a log is less important because it's less of a practical skill and it dulls your blade. So if your blade's dull and you don't have a means of sharpening it, say it fell out of your pack, pocket, whatever, so you got a dull blade, what do you have for self-defense other than the point of the blade? Or what do you have for skinning and meal prep or shelter building if you dull your blade doing something stupid?
And if you got to cut through 4 logs rather than just that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, true, and that's what I'm saying. It's just, I don't know. It's common sense. It's practicality versus what they try and do. Take the Hollywood side of it out.
Yes, sir. 100%. It's kind of like those little TV commercials you see for like the kitchen knives where they're just cutting through the tomatoes and everything else like it's butter. All of a sudden, how long is that going to last? What's the durability of it? The practical sense.
Yeah.
You start cutting through bone and everything else. It's like, well, it's not really what it's made for, but hey, it works for the time being.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to know, with your different tangs on fixed blades. Like, I'm more of a fixed blade guy, so an open tang versus a full tang versus a rat tail versus and there's a lot. So I mean, I always tell people, look at what you're doing. Look at how you're going to use it, how tough you are on it. Don't spend $500 for a knife if you're like a once in a week skin a fish kind of guy.
Yes, sir. And then, so I know you wanted to kind of talk about individuals you look up to.
Yeah.
That's really important as well, too. A lot of us kind of take for granted, like, how we got where we are or, who we follow, kind of going into like the like-mindedness. And, a lot of times the individuals we look up to, affect the careers we change, whether we go into the military. I mean, there's so many different effects on, who we look up to. And like, you see individuals that have, posters of like basketball players, baseball players, football players on their walls and things like that. It's like, oh, that's my idol. It's like, well, what are they doing for you? I mean, hey, it might be a great like superstar, but, realistically, like, why do you look up to them? So,
well, so there's a couple people, veteran and non-veteran alike, I guess. So growing up, I was a G.I. Joe, 80s kid, Hulk Hogan, WWF, say your prayers, take your vitamins thing, which I still kind of believe in a lot of that. I don't watch pro wrestling as much anymore because it's gotten lame. I'll just say it like that. But, so there's those guys. And then as far as like on the veteran side, even though I haven't personally met Hendrickson, the Green Beret that wrote Tip of the Spear, he's from the Northwest. I think he's living actually in Florida right now. But he's a great dude. He's kind of a meat and potatoes, humble dude. If you read his book, you'll see it. Severely injured multiple times and multiple IED explosions and on deployment over 10 significant injuries, we'll say it like that. 4 books that are in the Congressional Library. Good dude, Gordon Yule Jr. So those are two quick veterans. Jason that I mentioned earlier, great humble dude. Him and his wife both are just great people. So I look up to them. And then, on a business standpoint, from a business aspect, I like Tony, who owns Wooby Shoes, because he talked about how a lot of people said no to him all the time, and just how he kept persevering. And I look up to podcasters, a lot of them. Your show I like. Sean Ryan, his show is always entertaining. Some of Jocko's guests I like. It's kind of a different way of doing a show. So I mean, there's all sorts of shows out there I like. Eventually I'll start my own too. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. I like people in general that are real people. There's a lot of female vets out there, doing some kick-ass stuff too that I look up to. And, there's a lot of them. So I'm not going to mention anybody, because the minute I forget somebody, I'm going to get an inbox full of hate. There's a lot of good ladies out there too, doing good things on the veteran first responder community too. So.
And then how much of that impacts, in your personal life, plus as well as the things that you do and the things that you plan to do with the Gr8ter Veterans?
Well, I mean, we did right before COVID hit. We were supposed to do the Ladies of Liberty event where we were highlighting some female veterans. Megan Trapp was one of them. And we want to kind of have more female veterans share their story. So that's kind of, thinking about them and what they went through is a whole different thing than my military experience. Because when I was in artillery, was a male MOS, right? Like, there was that female the first time when they did their quote pilot program, or as I like to call it, their dog and pony show, where there was a female in artillery that got honor grad, right? And she was like 5'0" 100 and some pounds soaking wet. And I can tell you, as someone who's 6', 250 now, and was 6', 190 and solid when I was in, those rounds weigh about 100 pounds apiece. There's no way in hell she was slinging rounds like they said. I'll flat use that bullshit word again on that. But you know how the military is at times.
Yes, sir. It's like even in weightlifting, an average person should be able to, bench press their own body weight, and being able to do double and things like that. You're considered like superhuman, basically.
Yeah.
There's like you just said. I mean, there's just no way. And one of my other friends, guest, Ray Bashirs with Blue Shield Tactical, is one of the conversations that I had as well, to where a lot of people don't like to talk about it. But realistically, when it comes to physicality, it isn't an opinion. It's science. It's real life, to where men are constructed 100% different than a female when it comes to physicality and being able to handle certain things. I commend every female for wanting to implement themselves into certain careers or roles and things like that. But when reality hits in, it's not cut out for everyone. You're going to have that 1 in 1,000 that may be able to handle the requirements of, but it's not a case-made basis. And there's going to be males as well too. So I don't want everybody to be like, oh, well, this is a one size all type thing. But I just like talking about the realities of things rather than just, oh, that's just your opinion. No, it's not an opinion. It's a fact.
Well, I mean, I was what they call the number one man in artillery. So I was in charge of loading, firing, and clearing the howitzer, right? And there were some guys in our unit that, looked like Pinocchio's anorexic cousin, and not to pick on disorders, but, and it is what it is. I mean, people need to stop, being so thin skinned, and some things are the way they are, and it's not a preference. It's not anything other than reality,
100%. And so what's next? So I know on your page, on your Facebook page, you have where individuals can, for that concert coming up and everything else, where they can donate. Is there a site, or is there other ways that individuals can, donate to Gr8ter Veterans, whether it be for the concert or, for the cause itself? So how do individuals actually, provide to the actual cause or to the actual concert coming up?
So the Facebook page, Gr8ter Veterans Spokane, but it's spelled the right way instead of phonetically like we spell our name. I have zero control over that page in terms of being able to log in. Facebook banned me for a post years ago, and I haven't been able to fix it. But the PayPal link on there is still accurate, or you can message me and I can send you that. That's the primary way. The website should have a link on there. I believe it does. We just redid it and we're not done redoing the website yet. Or you can message me personally.
Perfect. And is there anything else you want to kind of talk about today, or?
No, just, be you. Like, I mean, I'm not going to go into it too much, but, like I was talking to you about in the green room about the fish hobby thing I do too, right? So that's something I used to do when I was in the military towards when I was getting out in Germany, and just, doing what helps you relax. Doesn't matter how acceptable or cool it is. Like, not everyone that's a veteran has to be out on the range, every Sunday. Sunday doesn't have to be gun day. I would like it to be, but ammo is still kind of tough to find, and so is time right now for me. But it's one of the things I mess with. They're called discus fish. I bred them in Germany. They're pretty. They're expensive as hell. I have almost $800 tied up in 7 fish, if that tells you anything. But it's something I learned when I was in that I stumbled into that relaxes me. I also do writing and poetry, still working on the book. But like I mentioned earlier, my garage is uninsulated and cold, so it's kind of hard to come out here and type without hypothermia or frostbite sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
But I mean, pursue what makes you happy,
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing too, is like with the writing of the book and everything too. That's what's nice about technology, being able to like kind of do a voice record, to kind of remind yourself of like what to kind of type about or write about later on.
Yeah.
But you made a comment too about to just be you. So like, the whole thing with my truth, the reality under the headline, it's you see, and because, like, I don't understand liars, because it's like, then you always have to remember what lie you told somebody. And it's, with cameras and stuff nowadays, everybody's using a filter. Nobody wants to be themselves. Everybody's trying to, go against their own beliefs to try to be accepted by others. And it's just like, if you don't like me, just, kick rocks, but it's nobody likes to hear positive, encouragement and things like that. Everybody always wants to, try to put that down. You show a dog mounting a sheep, everybody will be like, oh my God, that's good stuff. But you try to promote something that is for a good cause and providing service to another. It's like, oh, I don't know about that. So.
Well, and a lot of times, I mean, we've worked with nonprofits that help veterans and first responders that are started by someone who is neither a veteran or a first responder. And they go, well, I don't like how you feel like you have to compete with us. And I said, first of all, you're always competing for donations locally, nationally, doesn't matter. But what I don't like is, like, if you're working with someone else and say you're cross promoting each other's events, right? They want you to share their event on, your peak social media days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. But yet asking them to share your events, like, a big deal. And it's like, that's why I tell people, I said, if I share something, it's not always a direct endorsement unless I say it is. But if someone asks me to share something, if they're looking for some kind of help, whether they're a veteran or not, I help, because how long does it take you to share a post?
Right. That's like some of these Facebook pages as well too. It's supposed to be a resource and everything else, but you can't share a link or you can't share a resource. It's kind of comical when you think about it, but it's just like, it's like everybody wants to hold you back unless it applies to them and benefits them as a whole. And it's just insane. So.
Well, and you know how, like we talked about it earlier with some of these, more perceived veteran celebrity types, if you're not at 4 million followers like them, then you don't exist unless you want to book them for an event or buy their product in large volumes. And, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be that big or not, and I don't really care. I mean, I'm not doing this for that. And if I was, I'd use it for good. I mean, it's, in my opinion, the only reason someone would ever want to be rich, in my mind, is to do good with it, live comfortably and do good. But greed's alive in some people's eyes, no matter how much they have, and you can't change it, right? But I don't believe in being greedy. I mean, I want to have fun, help people, and be able to, at the end of my days, look back and say it was worth it before I go, and leave a legacy worth remembering, like I tell my kids. And some people it's less important to them, so that's on them. But I'm not going to change me no matter what.
100%. I encourage you not to. You know, you got to stay true to you. I mean, staying true to yourself is going to draw the like-minded people in, and those are going to receive the services that you are. And I mean, we'll get it to where it needs to be and everything. So just
Appreciate it.
Don't get discouraged. And you know, it's needed, regardless if it's 1 or if it's 10 million. You know, it's still affecting another life. So keep it going strong.
Amen to that.
And thank you so much for your time today, Nick. And reach out again. I'd love to have you on again. And I kind of want to do a show based strictly around Gr8ter Veterans here in the near future, so where we can kind of collaborate, have others on here as well too, so we can kind of boost it to where it needs to be and everything as well too for you.
Let me know when. You know how to get a hold of me, and I appreciate everything and every opportunity you've given us.
That's right. I appreciate you so much, and thank you for what you do, and stay safe and stay blessed in all things, brother.
You too. Thank you.
Always.